what I find fascinating just about the yoga aspect of what I do is that it's a holistic practice. And that means it combines different elements in order to bring about a bit of a more well-rounded viewpoint into any particular person. Now, psychology is great in that it really focuses in on the workings of the mind and trying to understand that. But I find where psychology has its shortfalls, then yoga steps in. Then, there are these other disciplines that step in to create a little bit more of a holistic picture of the person. So those are my credentials. And apart from those credentials, even if I hadn't gone to do my university degree in psychology or done my yoga teacher training, I would probably still be on this path because I have a personal history with depression and anxiety. I was diagnosed with severe depression in, I believe, 2017, when I left my advertising career of 11 years and was at a crossroads in my life. So one of the reasons that I left the advertising career, even though it was lucrative, I'd made it to the top senior management. I was the only woman representing in the top management amongst a whole, basically amongst a big group of men, is even though there was that pressure of that I've made it and that I'm holding the torch for other females, it was a very hostile, very abusive place. And unbeknownst to me, I had started suffering from mild depression, and I didn't even know it. I'm a whole psychology student, and I didn't even see the signs. So this started to, this for me is one of the most, it's one of the most interesting parts of why I talk about this, is because it is, depression is, I believe, it's one of the leading, if actually from the last time I checked the statistics, it's the leading cause of sickness and disability in the world. It used to be, I believe from the WHO statistics, it used to be car accidents, and then it was car accidents followed by, I believe, cancer, and then depression. But over the last 10 years, depression has gone all the way up to make it to #1 on that list. And so if it is the world's leading cause of disability, of disability and all these things, why we are not talking about it is still, it's still a big mystery. I don't understand it either. So I like to address it because it is something that's not only prevalent in our societies, but it's something that has affected our immediate communities. All of us here may or may not know, most likely may know somebody, whether it's directly or indirectly, but know somebody who has been diagnosed, or not even gotten diagnosed, but who has the symptoms of depression. So yes, in 2004, the World Health Organization declared it as the leading cause of human suffering. And this was in 2004, right? So the first was cancer, then it followed, then heart disease followed, then traffic accidents, then depression. But recently, in 2013, it made it up to #2 on the list. And by 2017, up to this day, so that's 4 years now, it's the #1, it's the leading cause. So this is just to paint a picture of not just in our community, say here in Kenya or in Africa or wherever it is that you are, but globally, this is a huge deal. Now, the global depression rates are 264, I think it's even gone up to 300 million people worldwide suffer from this. And of those 300 million people, it's, for some reason, a higher percentage of that is women versus men. So there are a few debates on this with a couple of interesting viewpoints. I had people chime in that maybe it's probably because women are more likely to go and seek help and go and actually get diagnosed than men. So it might not actually be accurate that more women suffer from depression. It's just maybe more women suffer from depression. More women have gone to seek therapy or to even just get diagnosed than men. But 300 million people in the world is it's quite a big deal. And depression, I call it it's a life-threatening disorder. And the reason I call it that is because of suicide. People don't commit suicide unless they are severely depressed. And when we look at the world suicide rates, we've got 800,000 people that die every year because of suicide. A lot of those are, say, between the ages of 15 to 30. And that's a big deal. That's a big deal. So this is one of the reasons that I'm really passionate about it. And my own history with it is when I got diagnosed, it took quite a couple of things to just crash and burn in my life for me to even realize that I needed to go and get help. And this is me as a psychologist, as a trained psychologist. And so for people who don't even have that background, it might take them longer to even figure out that they need to get help. And what I saw with my immediate environment was the friends that I had around me, the community, the people I had around me didn't quite either know what was happening to me, or they might have known and then they ran away from it because it was too intimidating to deal with. And this particular disorder is I mean, it's a very, very serious thing. And so when you have your support system or your supposed support system now leaving because they're not understanding how to deal with it, then you're in a worse off situation than if you had no support system to rely on. And so it's important for us to talk about it so that we can be there for others going through this, and that it doesn't intimidate us. If your best friend, your cousin, your sister, your brother is going through something, we know what to do about it. Yeah, because often the person going through it will not know what to do about it, and they need us to step in and to stand in. So what is depression? A lot of people seem to fall under the premise that it's just a feeling, you know, it's just a light thing that you can snap out of it. But no, it's not. It's actually, the technical term is the depressive disorder. It is a mood disorder, and it affects your physiology. So it's not just affecting your mind, it's affecting your body. It's affecting your brain chemicals. It's affecting everything in you in terms of functioning. It's a debilitating illness. It can be characterized by sleep disturbances, motor retardation, concentration, memory, attention deficits. It affects your neurotoxicity. So your prefrontal and hippocampal part of the brain are heavily affected by the serotonin, which when you have depression is produced, right? Now, this impairs people's ability to work, people's ability to love, people's ability to play, to function, to be themselves. It leads to suicidality. So that's suicidal ideation, suicidal planning, and unfortunately, the last resort is now suicidal attempts. Now, what actually happens when one starts to go through depression, whether it's mild, moderate, or severe, is depression physically, and scientists have measured this, and it's very fascinating to see. It lights up all the pain receptors in your brain. So I don't know if anybody here has gone through, has had a broken limb, for example. Now, when you break a part of your body, it lights up some of your pain receptors, not all of them. Depression lights up everything. And this is why people with depression physically feel pain. This maybe starts to help us understand and become a bit more empathetic with why somebody could commit suicide. It's not that they want to actually die, they just don't want to feel that level of pain permanently. They want to feel something else, all right? So it lights up all the pain receptors in one's brain. It completely depletes your energy, so you have no energy. It shuts down the left frontal lobes of part of the brain, which is the part of the brain that controls initiative. And so when you tell somebody with depression to snap out of it, or, you know, stop feeling bad, you know, you just need to get motivated enough to go see your friends or to do something, they don't have access to that part of the brain. And it's important for us to not be ignorant about that, and to know that physically the left frontal lobe is the part that controls initiative. They have no access if you've got depression, and to some scale if you've got anxiety as well. Now, serotonin. So let me just talk about the hormones a little bit. And when you have depression, what's happening in your body is that you're producing very low amounts of serotonin and very, very low amounts of dopamine and norepinephrine. And you need these hormones in order to feel good, in order to open up certain parts of the brain that now control your initiative, in order to function, okay? So these hormones are physically not being produced in sufficient quantities because of the production of another hormone, cortisol. So what cortisol does, cortisol does many things, but one of the things it does is it blocks off the brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF. And what this does, it's responsible for repairing parts of the brain. So as we walk around, as we live in this life, our brain does go through a bit of shock, right? So you're in traffic, you have to brake really hard. Your brain does go through a little bit of shock, and it is always actually under constant repair using through this BDNF. Now, this part of the brain, or these hormones, they allow the brain and also the rest of the body to control self-healing. So now when you have cortisol blocking that, you don't have access to the self-healing, very, very necessary part that you need. And that controls a whole lot of things. So you've also got, now in terms of the causes of depression. So we've learned a little bit about the hormonal and scientific reactions, right? So it's not just somebody's feeling low and that's it. No, there's things that are happening. They're not able to produce dopamine, which we need. They're not able to produce these hormones. And now, just trying to look at the why. Why do people get depressed? Okay, if you've gone through a big trauma, say you've gone through abuse, childhood abuse, or even adulthood abuse, rape, violence, we can understand, yes, okay, this was a little bit too much trauma for a person to process, and so therefore they get stuck in this state of depression. But what about the people who haven't gone through trauma and yet still get depressed? There's a lot of big question marks about that, because it's not really understood. And so scientists started to go in and go through why the causes, and started to understand what these causes were. So one of the biological causes is adrenal fatigue. So when we are in a constant state of stress, our adrenaline glands, which sit on top of our kidneys, are always firing. Now, the adrenaline glands were not designed to fire for long periods of time, because if you think about how our ancestors lived, if the danger was a lion, then you would have to outrun the lion or get eaten by the lion. That would take a couple of minutes, and it wouldn't take you hours. So now we're sitting in our offices and we're getting really, really stressed out by our bosses. And we're getting really, really stressed out by our bosses. And what happens is we're in this constant state of hyper awareness for a long, long time, causing the adrenaline glands to continue firing. So the adrenaline glands are producing adrenaline, they're producing cortisol, they're producing these hormones that are blocking the serotonin and dopamine to be produced. So now, apart from adrenal fatigue, which, we've all heard the term burnout. Burnout is adrenal fatigue. right? So you need time away from whatever is causing these stressors, whether it's compounded stressors or acute, big time traumatic stressors. You need time away in order for the adrenaline glands to even help heal themselves, right? And so if you are constantly, say, if you're living in a war zone, you've got, you don't have that time to go away and to heal and to allow yourself to allow your adrenaline glands to stop producing adrenaline and cortisol, right? So now this now causes all of this unnecessary production of adrenaline that keeps going. You also have another factor, which is poor gut health. So a lot of us, I mean, this is recent in the last 5 years that nutritionists and scientists have started to relay the relationship between your gut-brain axis, right? So a lot of us have been hearing about this, and especially for depression, this is very important. Now, your gut microbiome, the flora and fauna that lives in your gut, your bacteria, if you're eating food that's giving you or keeping you in a constant state of inflammation, it produces an environment that is basically a big party for small intestinal bacteria. So SIBO, you'll hear a lot of nutritionists and scientists talking about SIBO, that small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. When that happens, you've got now these bacteria, they're partying and they're multiplying on these sugars that are in your system, and they're causing these gases. And these gases now, they're gas byproducts. You've got hydrogen, you've got methane, you've got sulfites. They actually go and end up in the brain. Yes, can you hear me?
Could I ask you a question?
Yeah, sure.
When you're talking about food and inflammation, what are the just like the top things that kind of come to mind for you with those?
For
Pardon?
Inflammatory food.
Correct.
I'd say especially with gluten is a big one. Gluten, lactose, depending on the source of where you're getting your refined wheat and your refined sugars, those have become major around the world. So you'll find a lot of high wheat based product, high gluten foods end up going and really interrupting not just the stomach, but the large and small intestine, which is where this bacteria lives, right? So the inflammatory foods are actually quite different for different people because there's no one diet that suits everybody. Some people like me tend to burn starches and carbohydrates really well, whereas some people tend to burn protein really well. So it depends on your makeup as well. And it's I would say it's a very personal journey that one should just take note of how they feel after they eat certain foods. And if you're feeling depleted of energy, if you're feeling sluggish, if you're feeling cloudy in the mind, that's going to inflame your stomach. If you say take a milkshake and you feel immediate pains in your stomach, there's something that's off. Maybe in that milk, or maybe you're just not necessarily tolerant to lactose. So I need to remember the name of this app, but there's an app that Duke University came up with to help, FODMAP. So there's an app that they came up with to help people when they're grocery shopping or making dinner to check for foods that are low maintenance. And they called it the FODMAP diet, FODMAP. So if you just research low FODMAP diet, or you look for the FODMAP app, you'll get that. That's been a really good guide for me in order to know what foods give higher inflammation than others. So I hope that's helped with your question.
Yeah, that's helpful. I mean, you're sharing so much really wonderful information, so I don't mean to cut you off because you got a wonderful flow going. But I know a lot of, I work with a lot of people, and I'm really intrigued. And most people are intrigued about diet. That's kind of like a really common thing to talk about.
It is.
But thank you. Keep flowing. Thank you so much,
Yeah,
Emma.
And also for the rest of you, feel free to ask questions as we go along, because I do pack a lot of information in this, and it's good to just kind of get engaged to really absorb it, versus getting an info dump and then kind of feeling a little bit overwhelmed at the end of it. So I welcome that. So another thing that has been an attributed cause to depression and anxiety has been low omega-3 intakes, because of the way we're eating lots of processed food. So you've heard of, take your omegas, take your omega-3s. It's super important for your mood stability and for your brain health, omega-3s specifically. When people talk about high omegas in the diet, a lot of times we're thinking about omega-6s. And what happens with the receptors is, if you have too many, if you're intaking too much omega-6s, it actually blocks the receptivity of the intake of omega-3s. So I always tell people, find a good nutritionist and get a good plan to just see what you're deficient in. If you need more omega-3s, try to get it in as natural sources as you can, and just check, make sure you're not overdoing it with the omega-6s, so that the body has a chance to absorb the omega-3s in a more sustainable way, because that will go directly to contributing to your mental health. Yeah. Another thing, and this might be another contributing factor to why women might be suffering from this a little bit more than men, is pregnancy and hormonal changes. So I spoke about the hormones before, and how if you've got more of X hormone, you don't have enough of Y hormone. So for the menstrual cycle, you generally have hormone balancing itself out over a period of a cycle of a month. Now for pregnancy, it lasts over a period of 10 months. And a lot of times you've got some hormones that are coming up that are causing your body to not be able to produce, say, dopamine, which you need, or serotonin that you need. And so you might even have heard of postpartum depression. It is simply because of these hormones. The hormonal imbalance has been so drastic that the body needs time to come back to a decent level. Okay, so it's a real thing. And a lot of times, especially in African communities, there's a lot of ignorance to do with this. So unfortunately for mothers who've just given birth, first of all, giving birth is a traumatic experience. Yes, it's natural, but it can be natural and traumatic at the same time. Your body literally shifts. So there's a lot of huge changes that have happened in your mind and your body, and how people relate to you and how you relate to the world, that have shifted things. And so once you've given birth, then it's the realization of your life will never be the same again. That in itself can be traumatic, depending on your life circumstance. So postpartum depression is very, very prevalent. And these are some of the reasons why. You also have environmental and social factors. So things such as the death of a loved one, especially during COVID, we've lost a lot of people that are dear and close to us. And, after a while, even though you feel you might have gone numb, you're still registering the grief at a deeper level, and it's staying there because it's not being processed. So you could have cumulative small stressors, or you could have big traumatic acute stressors. They each lead to the same result. You have abuse. So I myself have had a past of physical abuse, emotional abuse, financial abuse, sexual abuse. So you've got all these different types of abuse that people have gone through that do lead to depression. You've got, say, social factors such as abandonment. So for example, I was mentioning that when I went through it, and my support system, my friends, I had a big group of 8 people, and they all disappeared. That causes the trauma in itself. So abandonment, neglect, things like that, and even forced abandonment, such as what COVID and the lockdowns have done, is isolate us. We are social beings, and that's actually necessary for our state of mental well-being. And the fact that now we've had to isolate, this is causing a lot of stress, because we're now having to live in a way that's not natural to us. We're not able to We're not able to operate normally, touch each other, which touch produces certain, oxytocin, certain hormones that go into mental well-being. And so there's a lot of, as you can see from everything that I mentioned, there's a lot of different factors. So doctors, therapists, psychiatrists, and scientists, all of them have agreed that there's no one single cause of depression. And for me, as a healer and as a teacher, I look at an equation in, if there's no one single cause, then there really cannot be one single treatment. And so when I hear about, like when I was diagnosed and I went to my therapist, and the first thing that my therapist said was, after we did the assessment and they saw that I was actually, because I was not only severely depressed, but I was past the suicidal ideation. I had gone past the suicidal planning, and I was now, before the therapy was my last straw before I attempted suicide. So when we did the assessment, I was honest, I was truthful, and everything came out. And he was so alarmed by how much on the edge of that cliff I was, that he immediately he wrote a prescription down for Zoloft, told me, go to the nearest pharmacy, get this, take them, come back, and we can do the session, right? Now, I understand that,
what did he ask you, what did he prescribe to you?
Zoloft. So
Zoloft.
you've got Zoloft. Yeah, it's one of the common antidepressants that are on the market now. But you have to get a prescription for them. I think there's about 3 or 4 that we know about, that we've heard in movies. Zoloft is one of them. So that's what I was prescribed for. And I guess luckily, because I don't know, but luckily for me, I was stubborn enough to say, thanks, I'm going to keep this prescription, but no thanks, I'm not going to take the pills, because the reason I came here is for us to get to the root of why I'm feeling like this. And if we can't get to the root, then I'd rather just exit out the way I had planned, because that means it's not going to get any better and it's not going to have a permanent solution. I was here for a permanent fix, and I was going to do whatever it is that I could to get deep down into the roots of what was causing this, to heal it. Right. And so I took the prescription and I kept it, and I still have it to this day as my reminder for, this was my break glass in case of emergency, because I knew where I was and where I was going. And so I told him, no, I trust you. Actually, my therapist was actually my psychology professor. So there's a good history between us. And so I told him, no, I trust you. That's the reason I came here. So you and I need to sit and talk and work through this. And don't worry, I'm not going to go down that road. If I feel that this isn't working, then fine, I will take the pills. But in the meantime, can we find a holistic way to deal with this? I had also refused because I knew I have an addictive personality. I was a cigarette smoker for many years. And so just knowing that I have that predisposition, I wasn't trying to add an addictive problem to my problems. So I just wanted a solution. And so personally, and also as a therapist, I will never champion for pills over holistic treatments, because pills are really a band-aid. They do not get to the root of anything. They just make things more bearable. Because what's happening with the pills is they're going in there and they're giving you your serotonin and your dopamine. That's what these pills are doing. So they're giving you an artificial feed of these hormones that you need to feel better. Which causes the dependence in the long run, because your body, it's just like cigarettes, right? Your body produces nicotine naturally, but if you start to smoke, you're giving your body external sources, and so your body stops producing. So that's the same thing with these antidepressants. Now, if you have, say, something like bipolar disorder, that's slightly different. So the medication they give people for bipolar is not your typical antidepressants. So it depends also on what it is that you've been diagnosed with, which is why I am a very, very firm advocate for go seek therapy, get a diagnosis so that you really understand what you're working with, and so you can have the best sort of treatment plan. Now, so that's depression. Anxiety is it's generally, what is it? It's uncontrolled fear, nervousness, worry about non-existent things or about future events. So how I like to describe this, because they're all on the same line here, but depression is worrying about stuff that happened in the past, and anxiety is worrying about stuff that might happen in the future. right? Both of these things do not allow you to be in the present moment. And so with anxiety, you've got people now who go into panic attacks or OCD, agoraphobia. So for example, I had simultaneously severe depression and I also had high anxiety. And what was happening was, even during the time I was going through now the suicidal ideation and everything, I had this huge fear. I had full-blown agoraphobia. I never left the house. I would get things sent to the house, shopping and all of these things. And this was before apps like Glovo came about. I just find a way to speak to somebody to then send things my way. And the reason that this came about is because I had gone through 5 traumas in 3 months. And those huge traumas, and they were big traumas, they left me realizing that the world is a really unpredictable, unsafe space, and I didn't feel safe in it. And so I could only feel safe within the confines, within the walls of my home, so that even stepping out to the shops, it was daunting for me, right? So high anxiety can bring very debilitating reactions to life, such as that. Things like OCD, even, is a byproduct of anxiety. Phobias, social anxiety disorder. You've got a whole bandwagon there. So your symptoms for anxiety are heart palpitations. Your physiological, how it affects you physiologically. You've got your heart is beating really fast and out of rhythm. You've got sweating, you've got chills, sleep pattern disruption, muscle tension, you've got lack of focus. So again, you can see the mind-body relationship being very immediate, right? And very debilitating, because if you're not in control of your focus, you can't do things like driving. You'll cause accidents. If your muscles are tense all the time, then they'll start to pinch nerves that might start to cause migraines. So these psychological invisible things, disorders that we're suffering from, do have very, very strong impact in the body, right? So it goes beyond the mind and starts to become something tangible. Now, in terms of, actually, before I move on into the next section, I wanted to find out if there were any questions from anybody, anything that you guys needed me to repeat, or any questions. So far, so good.
Yeah, I would just say it's so helpful to, and I've heard some of this before, but it's so helpful to hear a lot of the science behind the disorder, like to really understand it from hormonal, perspective, and kind of where the body is physically imbalanced to really have, because like you said, I think everyone, whether we know it or not, is somehow connected through family or friends to depression and anxiety. So I really appreciate all the context. That's all I have.
Thank you, Sunny. Yeah, I found, even through my own researching, it was very empowering for me to know, okay, this is not all in my head. This is not all in my feelings. My brain's actually firing or misfiring. And so therefore, this is why this is happening. And so it starts to paint a very real picture of, the realness of what's happening in the body. That starts here, right? Mind-body connection. So that's depression, that's anxiety. We've talked about the causes, we've talked about the symptoms, we've talked about what and why and how one can end up there, even though they've not had traumas in their life. For example, it could just be a bad diet, and then all of a sudden you're in severe depression, and you're wondering why. So now we start to see how, or we maybe start to get a bit more respect with the ecosystem that is the human being, and how the mind body connects and affects the physical body, and how, say, the digestive system affects the brain, and all of these things, so that we're not looking at things from one singular perspective, but we're looking at it holistically. For this is where the healing happens. And so I
have a question for you.
Yes, please.
This is Stacy. I was just wondering, when you have like family history with depression, is that kind of like another disorder that, well, I should say I do believe it's a disorder that can be passed down, just like diabetes or, heart disease. But I'm wondering, is it harder or more difficult for someone who has that kind of like generational hereditary depression to find solutions, just like, someone who has like suffered through like life experience trauma that, obviously is depression is an obvious outcome of that trauma. But when it comes from like a historical approach and from the family, do you find that it's harder for folks to find natural solutions to alleviate that depression versus, someone who has a life experience?
That's a great question. I find it's first understanding why is this something that can be passed down, or how is it something that can be passed down? To answer your question, first of all, no, I don't feel, or I have not seen in my experience, that it is harder for people to heal from this if they have it in their family. I've had it in my family, but it didn't make it harder for me to heal from it. And the reason is, if you look into the why it is hereditary, we take on patterns from our parents, and they take on patterns from their parents, and vice versa, and so on and so forth. And until somebody stops and starts to do a lot of self-growth and self-healing to break patterns, we will continue to carry these patterns forward. And these could be patterns of anything. It could be patterns of how we love people. So dysfunctional patterns of how we relate in relationships, we learned them. Patterns of how we relate to life, whether we're feeling empowered, whether we're looking at challenges as opportunities or as obstacles. Those are learned patterns. We learn these behaviors and we pass them on. So the same with depression, and even the same with I found it very interesting how we say diabetes is something that's hereditary, or other lifestyle, because these are lifestyle illnesses. Why are they hereditary? Well, it's because if you're born into a family that eats high processed sugars, that's a pattern you pick up, and that's something that you continue into your diet. And so you are predisposed to getting this. Why? Because you've learned that pattern. So for everything that's hereditary, same with alcoholism. They say that if you come from a family of alcoholics, you've got a higher predisposition to becoming an alcoholic. It's not because there's a gene that weakens you. No, it's because you have grown up seeing that alcohol was the result. Alcohol was the thing that one reached for when they were feeling this way, right? And you've learned those patterns. And a lot of these patterns we learn by the age of 7. And so they've gone into our subconscious. We're not even consciously aware that we've picked them up until now we're, say, older and shit has hit the fan, and we start to realize, oh, my coping mechanisms are not very constructive. I wonder where these came from. Right? And so it's really about the patterns that we have picked up that we may not be 100% conscious of. So it's I'm another big advocate for self-development work, that we should all be doing this work of looking into ourselves and just seeing, every year do an analysis, the same way a company would do an analysis of how they operated during the year. Do a self-analysis and just see, where are your areas of weakness that you want to build on? And do this for your relationships, do this for your relationship with yourself. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay, lovely. Is there any more questions before we move to the next section?
Well, Nyamwathi, I wanted to say, it's not a question, but just in reflection of what you're saying, when you say something's hereditary, you're kind of, you're a victim to that circumstance. Mm-hmm. Whereas when you say that you're carrying on certain patterns that you yourself can work on and change within yourself, that puts the power on you and the responsibility on you. So that that was cool.
Brilliant. Good. If anything, if there's anything I want people to take away from this is empowerment, because we live in a society that has tried to train us to be as disempowered as possible in order to, gain control. But no, these are, you can look at it like, I come from a lineage of X, of Y, but I choose to stop certain things in that lineage. And to bring healing to my ancestors and to my ancestors that will come after. But it's an individual decision. Well, this is where free will comes in, right? So no matter what kind of baggage you were born with, you've got the ability and the resolve to actually solve it, right? So when it now comes to treatment, so what I do is, it's an interesting hybrid of things. And because of my personal history with this, I have a passion for it. What happened when I started now to go see my therapist was, I found going to therapy, at first it was every day, so 5 days a week, because I was doing really badly. So 5 days a week therapy for an hour and a half. But I found now when I went home, I would still feel, I didn't have the support system. I didn't have anything really that was anchoring me or grounding me. So I found that I still needed support. And so unbeknownst to me, I started to actually craft a program that is something that I now use today to help others heal, that now basically complements all of this. So the therapy will take you so far, which is great, but you need the extra support, because you're not going to be living with your therapist. Your therapist is not going to be in your pocket all the time. So you need to start understanding what it is in your life you need to supplement and to give to yourself in order to enable yourself to heal properly, right? So for treatment, the treatment recommendations that my programs do, especially when we're talking about depression, it's for both depression and anxiety, it's a combination of psychotherapy, which is talk therapy. Sometimes depending on how conscious or aware the person is with root causes of what could be causing the depression, if it's traumatic, they might need hypnotherapy or regression therapy, where you go into the subconscious, right? So during the assessment, one will be able to see and tell. So psychotherapy in partnership with regression or hypnotherapy, cognitive behavioral therapy is a good one, and interpersonal therapy. So those are the ones I play around with, as well as KinAesthetic therapy. It's a type of therapy that gets you to really sit in your feelings, in your emotions. A lot of times in this life, we're living in a way where we're told to control our emotions. Don't cry, don't be mad. It's inappropriate to feel this way right now, but emotions exist to be felt. And if they're not felt, they're not released. And if they're not released, they stay in the body, because we express emotions through our body. They don't get expressed any other way. When you're angry, you clench your jaw. The emotion stays here, okay? When you're sad or frustrated, when you're, say, nervous, you get butterflies in your belly, right? Always. They stay in the body and they're registered in the body. So that particular type of therapy helps you to get to sit in with the person, with the feelings, because you might not actually be aware of what you're feeling because of a lifetime of not looking at or identifying feelings. But you can feel it as an ache in the body. And so it just helps you to join the two and to start to help release that emotion. So I'm trained as a KinAesthetic therapist, as well as a cognitive behavioral therapist. And so when I do sessions with my clients, it's a mixture of this. It's not just one type of therapy. It's a combination of these things, as well as neuro-linguistic programming. So you might have heard of NLP. So that's a really important tool, because NLP helps go into the psyche, into the psychology of people, to really replace any negative patterns. Yeah, because how we talk to ourselves is also patterns, right? A lot of the times, actually not a lot of the times, Your inner voice, the voice that talks to you, that's your mom or your dad's voice, or whoever raised you, that's their voice. So if you find that your inner voice is extremely critical, your parent was extremely critical. And so you picked up that pattern, and that's how you learned how to talk to yourself. And so neuro-linguistic programming goes in to just erase a lot of that, to unwire and to rewire them into positive, encouraging, more empowering paths that help get you out of that victim mentality. It reprograms the nervous system basically through language, if you want to look at it that way, right? So I also put in mindfulness practices. So now this is where the yoga comes in. So you're setting your intention setting, your yoga asanas as well, because movement through the body, remember, emotions reside in the body. So when you start to, if you need to release things that are very, very deep in the body, sometimes engaging the body through movement is a great way to do that, to unlock. So for example, in with my clients, you know, if you're going through depression or anxiety, I'll have them sit in hip openers for a really long time. And you'll find, if you do this experiment with yourself, say you've had a really stressed day, if you sit in, say, seated half cow pose, right, where your knees are kind of going like this, it's a very unnatural, uncomfortable pose, and you sit there for what, 5 to 10 minutes, you will start to feel all of these emotions. Anger comes out, sadness comes out, tears. When I was in that pose for the first time for 5 minutes, all these tears just started to come out in class. You know, I was crying like a baby. I was wondering where the hell, I had a great day before, so I was wondering what the hell is going on with me. I did not know that those emotions had been stuck in my body and were now being pushed out to be released, right? So yoga asanas are really great with this, but you don't just use yoga asana alone, you use them in tandem with all of these things. So with the yogic practices, I love how holistic they are, because you're not just doing asana, but you're also practicing meditation. You're also practicing, say, things like the yoga nidra is a great way to practice keeping yourself grounded in the present moment. Because remember, depression, your mind goes into the past, anxiety, your mind goes into the future. Yoga nidra is a good technique to help keep you literally in this present moment. And something else, say, especially for if I'm working with people with anxiety, breathing exercises. So your pranayama can be extremely beneficial and impactful for this. There's a breath that I love to teach people that if we've got a little bit of time, you know, 3 to 5 minutes at the end, I want to take us through this breath so that you can actually feel the physiological changes in the body, because you will feel it even in those 3 minutes, right? So with pranayama, there's a breath work that if you exhale for twice the length of your inhale, it clicks on the parasympathetic nervous system in the body. So we're dealing with your autonomic nervous system here, right? And if you're in your parasympathetic nervous system, you're in your rest and digest mode. You cannot feel stress while you're in this mode. Your body and your cells, their ability to heal and generate, regenerate and heal, are only activated when you're in your parasympathetic, yeah? When you are in your sympathetic, that's the opposite. Your system, your body can't run these two systems at the same time. So when you're in your sympathetic, you're in your fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. That's now when your adrenaline is being produced, your cortisol is being produced. That's when all of these hormones to get you out of danger are being produced that are shutting down your ability to digest food, your ability to get a clear head. No, your body cannot operate these two at the same time. So I love to teach this breath to people because it's such a quick and easy, accessible way to switch you out of your sympathetic and into your parasympathetic, which we want to be in our parasympathetic for as long as we possibly can. Sleeping, so when we're in a sleep state, melatonin goes to, so that hormone is produced when we are in our parasympathetic. So you want to be in this state as long as you can in order for the body to repair itself, for digestion to happen well. So the yogic practices now come in to help bring a holistic support to the system, right? I also love to add So this is now where the coaching comes in. So things like affirmations and gratitude lists, they help reprogram, because again, we were talking about patterns. So especially if you're depressed, you've now gotten into a pattern of looking for the dangers and the threats. And your reptilian brain is really good at that because it wants you to survive. And so in order to survive, you need to know where the danger is so you can avoid it. But now it gets way too activated and is not able to shut itself down. So now when you start to practice, say, simple thing like writing a gratitude list of 5 to 10 things that you were grateful for that day, this goes to reprogram what your brain is focusing on and how your brain is focusing on it. Yeah. And doing this, say, over a period of a month to 2 months gets you into an automatic state of now starting to, after writing consistently gratitude lists, 5 to 10 new things every day that you're grateful for, after a period of a month, you start to automatically do it. You'll start to automatically feel grateful for the small and the big things. And that's a state you want to be in. There's things like journaling, being able to keep you in touch with your emotion and express them. Journaling is something that I advocate for. Part of my past in advertising was I was a writer for 11 years. So just using the written words to release things that are within you is very powerful. Habit trackers, keeping yourself accountable, are things that I employ into these programs. And then you've got a whole bunch of other fun things like animal therapy. Even cuddling with your cat or your dog is therapy, and produces hormones instantly. So, cuddling with your pet or cuddling with a loved one do go to scientifically help by balancing your hormones. They produce your oxytocin and your dopamine that you need. Okay. Things like nature therapy, being out in the wild, produces these hormones as well. Your oxytocin, there's another hormone called prolactin, which is produced only when you're in nature. And that goes to help with your mental well-being. You've got light therapy. So you know how they say soaking in the sun is good for you? Well, this is why. It's because vitamin D, we produce vitamin D. So vitamin D is not actually a vitamin. I don't know why they ever called it a vitamin. Vitamins are nutrients that we get from external sources. Hormones are things we produce internally, right? Vitamin D, we don't get vitamin D from an outside source, we produce it within us. So vitamin D is actually a hormone. And this hormone goes into, it's the same as your dopamine and your oxytocin. It's a good feeling hormone. So it goes to help keep and regulate your mental well-being. So you want to produce as much vitamin D as possible. So especially for people living in very cold countries, when you're in your winter, you hear about people having seasonal, what is it called? Seasonal depressive, seasonal something depression. And that's actually because you're not able to produce that vitamin D that you need. And that's simply environmental, right? So trying to be out in light without shades on for at least 20 minutes a day to get those photons, get those light rays in your system, 20 minutes minimum a day is what the doctors recommend. You've got, and you've got things, say, such as now nutrition. We've covered that a little bit, but if you now start to use a low inflammatory diet, the FODMAP diet, it's going to help regulate and keep things a little bit less hectic in your body, right? So blood sugar and everything just calms down. And last but not least, we've got social support. So this is incredibly important for people going towards for people suffering from depression. Thanks, Linda. Seasonal affective disorder. That's it. So yeah, when we've got now so I was able to geek out and write a whole timetable for myself, and to put in asana, and I'm meditating here, and I'm doing this, and I'm also going to seek my therapist, and I'm eating more greens, and I was able to do that for myself. Not everybody's able to do that. Yeah. And so it is important for us to be there for each other and to be each other's social support. So if you've ever had a friend, family member, somebody close to you who's going through depression, helping them get all of these things is very effective. You know, a lot of times we sit and it's stressful to be the person on the social support side because you're feeling overwhelmed. You know, all of a sudden, oh, that person's mental well-being is my responsibility. No, you're just there as a support. So even things such as making sure that your depressed friend is eating right goes a long way to helping their mental well-being, right? So social support, being there, hugging them, touching them, just being there is going to help affect their ability to produce those hormones that will get them out of the depressive or anxious state. So I basically have 2 programs that I run for people going through depression or people going through anxiety, and they combine they combine a couple of these different things. As you've heard, there are quite a lot of things here. And it is this way because people have different reasons why the depression is affecting them. So if somebody hasn't gone through trauma, I would not even put them through the psychotherapy because it's not necessary. If their depression is coming from a nutritional, an inflammatory diet, then it would be, yeah, we need to look at your diet and we need to look at your movement and how you're exercising. So these are all parts that then get used appropriately, depending on the reason, depending on the root causes of why somebody's going through depression or anxiety. And so, so even in terms of the type of yoga asana I would prescribe would be very different. So if you're depressed and I put you in a vinyasa class, you might take a gun and shoot everybody. So I'm not gonna, put you through something that's high-paced and fast because you're not there and you won't be there anytime soon. I'll definitely put you in a yin class, something that's soft and loving and helps create safe space where you start to learn to trust being in your body again. Or a hatha class, something that's slow where you can start to feel more in control of yourself. But if somebody, say, is now suffering from anxiety, then putting them in a yin class, they're gonna wanna, murder people as well, because everything's moving really fast and they're being told, sit down, shut up and meditate. It's not going to happen. We need to be real with this. And so for people going through anxiety, I'll put them in a nice, high-paced, very vigorous vinyasa class, because in order to bring balance, you need to kind of catch the body where it is, right? So, I mean, you need to bring the body to where the mind is. So if the mind's reeling really fast, get the body to move really fast so that you've got a balance, and then taper it down, right? So again, depending on what you have, then there's asana for that. Just seeing a question here. What do you do for people who have both depression and anxiety? I hope I've answered that question with the treatments here. And so depending on what you have, there is something that can be used holistically in tandem with these programs that help.
Referring to what you're saying, Nyamwathi, I've noticed also, like, just in teaching yoga, like in different modalities of yoga, like, I have a lot of friends that were alcoholics that are really attracted to hot yoga. Some of that intensity somehow kind of, so I'm with you. It's really beautiful. I'm really loving your presentation. Thank you.
Lovely. Yeah, no, it's because you have to match the vibration. Otherwise, it's imagine you're on a fast spinning wheel and then you're trying to get in, you bounce right off. So you have to find a speed that matches that in order to even bring it back down. So again, it's looking at what it is, understanding what it is, and then trying to meet it where it's at, rather than trying to manipulate it to be what it's not, right? And so this is the approach that I have with sorry, I've got cats trying to distract me. Gypsy. Yeah, sorry. So they're adding to my stress and anxiety right now, rather than giving me dopamine and oxytocin. Silly cats. So yes,
Laughter.
Yes, this is this is the so this is the program. This is how I look at these two very serious conditions, and how I encourage people to look at them and to help get them treated. And so psychology is great, but you need all of these other things to support that. And all of these other things work really great, but psychology comes in to also support that. Same with nutrition, same with meditation, same with the yoga asana. So I'd say learn to look at something from a very holistic point of view, just to understand, I mean, with everything, with the world we live in, with the body we're in, it's an ecosystem. We don't just have a circulatory system by itself. We've got circulatory, digestive, respiratory. So you've got all of these things that have a domino effect if there's an issue in one. And so that's my approach. And yeah, I'd like to take on any questions, any comments, and then we'll go into the breathing exercise, and then we can close.
This is Stacy again. I really appreciate the information. It's just so such a huge insight. I have a loved one who was diagnosed at a very young age with depression. She's been on medications for about four years. At one point in time, she tried to take herself off of medication, and with no, supervisory or, no doctor support. And she spun into like a serious, like bipolar. She went through a whole summer of being hospitalized, and just, it was horrible. She's back on that antidepressant now. She's been on it again. It's been a few years since that last occurrence, but what would you suggest for someone who has been on, medications for, several years, 3 to 4 years, 5 years? What would you suggest for that individual to be able to, like you said at the beginning, take a more holistic approach? Would that be to consult with someone such as yourself, or would it be to go back to that Western philosopher, who prescribed her that medication? Do you have any suggestions for that?
I would suggest a combination of both. So first of all, she needs to look for a practitioner who has a holistic outlook with treating what it is that she's going through, that goes into the root of why she's feeling that way. Because unless we find the roots, the tree's going to keep on sprouting branches, no matter how many times we cut those branches off, right? So she might, if she got this from a young age, it might be, say, a trauma that happened to her from a very early age, before she was even cognizant of it, and so I would prescribe, I would say hypnotherapy and regression therapy might actually be very impactful for her, to help her get into these deep states of awareness in order to release things that might need releasing. I might also want to look into her diet, and see, like if you think about the baby foods a lot of us grew up on, a lot of that stuff was processed. I mean, I was a colic baby, and that, showed that there was an inflammation in my digestive system, probably because I was eating Cerelac, which is heavily processed. And so it might not be a traumatic cause, it might be a dietary cause, but I would advise for a person like that to go to a holistic provider, or to go to many different providers, but get a total holistic outlook. So yes, you can go back to the Western psychologist or psychiatrist, whoever she's seeing, and ask them for a plan to get her off the meds. If that doctor says there is no plan to get off the meds, she needs to look for another doctor, because that doctor is keeping them dependent on these pills. Yeah. But there are doctors that are forward thinking, that have started to open up more than just the pill popping big pharma way, and have started to look at how can we look at the system in a more holistic way to stop people depending on this. So I'd say she could do it both ways, and many other ways as well. But that just getting off the medication like that without having any holistic support treatment plan in place is not going to be good.
Right. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
How does hello, my name is Dante. How does I'm not sure you're in Nairobi also, I assume,
Yes, I
correct?
am. Mhm.
How does from a holistic standpoint cannabis or cannabis CBD or things of other holistic ways play into the culture of Nairobi and other alternative medicines?
From a Nairobi point of view, or just globally?
From a Nairobi standpoint of view or psychology, have you seen any changes of the use of cannabis or hemp or other holistic avenues than medication?
I
Have you?
haven't seen it mainstream, but I've definitely seen it amongst the, say, yoga community or the vegan community.
Mhm.
I had a couple of friends actually who are doctors, so big pharma kind of training. And for, say, cancer patients, they would actually call on weed dealers to help uh, their
And
patients deal, right? So you do have open-minded practitioners here, but the fact that it's still not only it's not being decriminalized, it's still very much illegal, means you've got still a lot of barriers to its usage and to its reach here. So you'll find, say, if you're somebody who wants to get access to that as treatment, you now have to deal with the fear that that comes with of, oh, will I get arrested? Which already, if you're going through depression or anxiety, that's going to make it even worse, right? So yeah, so from a Nairobi context, it's still quite a challenge, but from what I'm seeing with the continent, I think there's 7 countries now in Africa that have decriminalized and or legalized marijuana. And so there's a chain reaction that's happening, and I know our leadership is quite innovative, and so um, eventually we'll get to that state where it's either decriminalized for health purposes or it's being completely legalized for recreation purposes. But to this day, it's still very much a paranoid uh, uh, environment with that, unfortunately.
Could I add to that question, Nyamwathi?
Yeah,
So
sure.
I was thinking just from what Dante said, that's on the legal kind of like, aspect and what doctors will recommend. But have there been studies also done on how that is helpful? That like on another note. Um,
Yeah. I believe there have been loads of studies done, especially on anxiety specifically, yes? Anxiety and depression, because it calms you down by force, whether you want to be calm or not. It's I don't know whether it's the indicas or sativas, but one of them brings you back down and gets you to a state of least resistance, or that's what I like to call it, where you're not in conflict with yourself, you're just at ease. And that's because it's tapping you into the parasympathetic, right? So it's doing it in an artificial way, but it's getting you to where you're supposed to be in order to calm down from the anxiety. And the same thing with the depression. It's shifting you out of your sympathetic into your parasympathetic. So there's these loads of studies that have been done to show the correlation with this. And for me, I was an avid weed smoker actually during those days, and that's probably what kept me from getting seriously depressed for a long time, because I withstood a lot of trauma before being able to before getting diagnosed. And I believe the marijuana did have a impact in helping me not get there faster. But I have to say, because I was doing it recreationally, there is this, with long-term users, you get into this state of apathy. This is not an old wives' tale. This is, your body, your mind gets saturated. There's that prefrontal cortex that's in charge of initiative, that also gets switched off with long-term use. Yeah. So again, it's a little bit of a balancing act. It's tricky. So I find I wouldn't use, and I don't prescribe marijuana as part of the treatment, because we still have a lot more to learn about it. And so, yeah, but things, say, for example, if you've got anxiety and you've been prescribed for, say, a CBD oil, where there's nothing psychoactive, that's cool. Because it's not messing with your sense of perception.
Yeah. Thanks for answering that question. We have because on our platform we're all from all over. So for example, I'm in Washington, DC. Linda Key is in Canada, where marijuana and hemp is a part of Canadian culture. And
Boulder, especially, I've got good friends in Boulder. Yeah.
Francisco's in Oregon, which was the very first state in the United States in the 70s that passed it. So there has been a lot of studies in the process of it. Like you said, CBD and the use of the cannabinoid and stuff. So I was interested in wondering if, because it's a plant that you can easily cultivate in home within your borders, that can do so much for bringing jobs and so many other things to the culture when you open that up, to farmers and growers, and when you're talking about fabric. So I'm also wondering, like, do you feel like the sciences also are following into like a Western, where you're using Westernized medicine, Westernized tools, things where it's heavily dependent, where you feel like you all can cultivate your own healing and wellness in Nairobi?
Yeah, I'd say, I don't know. Salim, what do you think? You've lived here?
So restate, I'm serving dinner to the kiddies as I'm doing that. So you asked me about the culture of cannabis in Nairobi, and specifically what, Dante?
Well, I was asking about medicine. So if Western culture is in the African culture of medicine, where Africans are Nairobians are using more of Western medicines, like you said, Zoloft and some of these other prescribed medicines that are more Western. And then there's other things that you feel like as Nairobians can do in-house without like the dependent, like for example, cannabis is one, or the hemp plant, or the studies around it, and wondering, like, do you see it in it? Or
my personal experience is that medicine and Tara is also, by the way, a medical practitioner in Nairobi as an acupuncturist. But my experience has been Kenyans and Nairobians tend to be very Westernized in the approach towards medicine and healing. And I would say, to the extent that there's a lot of negative associations with traditional African healing systems, as opposed to West Africa, where it's much more prevalent. When I was in Ghana, like a lot of people in Accra will put as much validation towards traditional healing African systems as they will to Western medicine, much more so than here in Kenya, in my experience. Probably up country outside of the city, there's a bit more balancing, and some of, it's their religion, it goes in a lot of directions. So that's generally been my experience. The pharmacy, the chemist, they call chemist here, the pharmacy, is it makes good business, very good business in Nairobi. And I think now, and that's one of the things that's wonderful about even this presentation is, I think Nyamwathi is someone who's sort of on, I don't want to say the cutting edge, but a part of like the movement to offer, alternative ways of kind of approaching healing, and certainly not stuck or married to, just allopathic as the way, to heal. So it's this is post-colonial Africa, and there's been a huge, impact of Western culture, philosophy, deference to Western systems, including medicine, certainly, and religion. We won't go into that, but it's a part of it. It's a part of the mental, psychological impact of deferring. So I think that's in my experience, is very prevalent.
Yeah, and I'd just to add on to that, I found out this morning that was quite shocking to me as
it's my.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Salim's Wi-Fi skips in and out a little bit.
Oh, that's happening. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Nyamwathi. Continue.
Yeah, so yeah, just Salim's observations, 100% accurate. I've been born and raised in Nairobi, and I did have the chance to live 4 years in Senegal in West Africa. and the differences were like day and night, in terms of getting access to traditional treatments, and just not even getting access, but embracing them. And I found out something quite horrific this morning, and that was, in our Constitution, there's an actual act that states that our traditional practices and beliefs are akin to evil and should not be practiced. And it is to this day in our documentation, in how we address the country. So I was talking to somebody who's lobbying to get this changed, because this was done during colonial period, when they wanted to brainwash everybody into, you must adhere to Christianity, you must adhere to Western medicine and all of this, to just take that off so that we can start to get in touch with our own sources of healing. So it's an unfortunate reality that has gotten ignored, that because we're so westward facing, we're as a country, we're looking to the US or the UK or Europe, we're looking outside for examples on this is where we want to go, rather than looking inside, that we don't even see that we still have those road bumps in our own Constitution and in our own policies and legal structures. So that's
Nyamwathi, it's like, studying history gives us so much insight. And based on what Salim just said too, like regarding like in East Africa and in Kenya, that approach to those old traditions was like, has more of a negative thing. Well, it makes sense going, looking at the Constitution, and like what they put down, and those embedded things that they embedded into the system that cultivated that kind of evil perception, and kept people from studying deeper into those, because I'm sure at the roots, I'm from Peru, and the Andes, like in the Andes, Western medicine is not important at all. Like there's no like Western doctors, it's like midwives, it's like everyone's got an aunt that's a midwife. You go down the street and they'll go birth someone, and there's little like flags that stick out of the houses that means you can birth here, and and it's very much, there's also no TV, it's radio, so I think that's part of it. It's not like a TV culture, and that's part of that, like looking up to America. But if you go to the big city in Lima, it's very much hospitals and things like that, and also here where I am in Oregon, just to add to this, they've legalized psilocybin. So the mushrooms are being used in microdosing for depression.
Fantastic, because they have fantastic, very powerful results. I've done quite a bit of research. Even actually on my depression journey, before I saw my therapist, I was trying to figure out how to get access to that, or to ayahuasca, or something that was hard hitting and powerful enough to help cure and shake this. So that's brilliant that they're legalizing that. Nice.
So Nyamwathi, it's interesting what you were talking about with the Constitution. They are trying to change it. I mean, but in a really messed up way. So I was invited to be an advisor to the government with the new Constitution for what they call the traditional, I think it was the Traditional and Alternative Medicine Health Bill or something. They tried to make a new bill for the new Constitution. And traditional medicine is involved with that. I actually resigned from like the advisory post. And the main reason was that they did embrace traditional medicine. They said there has to be a space for traditional medicine to be acknowledged in Kenya. But it was an umbrella bill, let me say. So what they do is they said traditional African medicine, the ngangas and all of that, optometrists, physiotherapists, acupuncturists, naturopaths, you name it, like anything that is not Bachelor of Medicine is under this bill.
Yeah.
And there's no self-governing bodies, there's no government bodies, there's no regulation. And then within the traditional medicine umbrella, you know, it's like what Salim was saying. There's these cultural taboos that are longly deep set, and nobody wants to embrace them. I think as well, there's no monitoring, if you see what I mean. So because there's no governance, you know, there's just this umbrella thing where there's no definition of this is what traditional African medicine is. This is what acupuncture is. This is what psychology is. This is what physiotherapy is. There's no way of saying, okay, you can take this. This damages the liver. This is good in small doses. But, you know, there's all these different factors that come into play. So I think it's a work in progress. And I think it's voices like yours which will take it forward. I mean, they've put the new bill out. It's, you know, I haven't even bothered to read it because it's just appalling.
No, but it's clear that there's movement that started to change.
Exactly. There's scope for it. Like, it's an evolutionary process, let me say, but it's still in the very, very early stages.
That too, I mean, I don't remember who it was, but there was someone in, I think, whose cabinet who was advocating for medical marijuana as well, kind of back to what Dante was saying. And so even the fact that that conversation is happening, or that people are willing to look at science or look at other neighboring countries or nearby countries that have adopted medical marijuana, is like, you know, is a step forward that it can be, you know, because here in Kenya, you know, 20 years ago, you wouldn't be having that conversation, you know, like, you know, there was just so much fear, and, you know, you know, it's a different kind of government structure. So I think there's movement forward, or like you said, Tar, even that this is in conversation now is probably very different than it would have been back in the 90s, or certainly back in the 80s, right?
Or 70s as well.
70s, yeah.
But I think it goes back to what Nyamwathi said, like, you know, like medical marijuana, like anything that you take, whether it's Zoloft, whether it's, you know, some anti-anxiolytic, some anti-anxiety drug, or whatever it is, it has to be monitored, because when you're taking it recreationally, it's very, very, very different. And when you're trying to self-medicate, so to speak, and there's no guidance, that can totally go the opposite way, you know? So it is about not just opening dialogue, but also, in my opinion, finding ways to support that beyond saying, let's legalize it, to make sure that there's the support network in place, that when it's legalized, it's not just self-medication and like confusion when it all gets messed up.
Right.
Exactly. Very powerful. Thank you so much for that, Tara. That gives me hope for the country. Yay, we're moving somewhere. It might be messy, but at least it has begun, that shift. And I'm hoping that the people who are championing this, that there's a good representation of the youth in that, just for forward movement purposes. Nope, damn it. All right, so I need to know how to get involved. So I'll do a sidebar with you, Tara.
We have to chat.
Let's. Lovely. Anybody? Yes. Linda. Yes, Linda.
Yes, Nyamwathi, thank you so much. And Tara, you know, that point that you just brought up. First of all, Nyamwathi, I wanted to say, you know, I don't really have a lot of questions because you were so thorough. Not in just the work that you do, but, you know, sharing your personal story as well. And so everything you mentioned, like you were covering all these points. I was like, I don't have a question, you know, she's like, you're just,
thank you. They used to get annoyed at me being too detailed.
Pardon me?
I'm saying they used to get annoyed at me at being so detail oriented. So thank you. That's wonderful feedback. Thank you.
Oh, no, I really, really appreciate it. And there's all the points that you were hitting resonate with me in so many ways. And so with the fact, you know, I'm working a lot right now on freedom from family patterns and exploring all these different avenues from a holistic perspective. And so I just want to say, like, everything you've presented have been helpful in personal well-being, but also you know, we're all teachers here in different ways. And so it's very helpful in approaching, you know, how we might be able to start to support somebody from these different angles. My one question, I see a little sunflower painting behind you. So I'm wondering if you have, in your personal journey, do expressive arts therapy in a way to help, sometimes, like, I know Francisco has a few flutes he has and berimbau's, in the space there. And so I personally I'm an actor, storyteller, and it's helped me sometimes to be like, I need to like write a rap song or pick up a flute or a guitar or paint something. So have you used that at all in some of your?
Yes, actually, thank you so much for asking that, because I totally forgot to mention that apart from journaling, just artistic expression is such a wonderful way to get in touch and express these emotions. So the sunflower you're asking, I painted that actually when I was coming out of the depression. So it's hugely significant to me. But I'm also a musician. So playing guitar or learning how to play guitar, I didn't take classes. I just, during the height of my severe depression, I had one friend who was my neighbor actually, who would just come down to make sure I hadn't died on him. He's like, hey, are you still alive in there? Okay, I'm taking you and we're going to do X and Y. So he'd force me to even shower and just get my life together a little bit. And so one of the trips is we went to a music store because he wanted to buy a guitar. And I ended up falling in love with this guitar that you see over there, this black guitar there. And I had no motivation to even leave alone buying a guitar. So I'm like, I've got money, might as well just buy it. It's beautiful, fine. And then I had it in my house. And at some point I just picked it up and started to play it. And that became part of my therapy, because the more I realized, hey, I can make cool notes here, is the more I started to believe a little bit in myself. So there was a very, very strong shift that happened through my ability to express myself musically through these artistic endeavors. So yeah, writing, I know, like you were talking about rap songs, I had a really bad breakup, and what helped after the breakup was to write one hell of a rap song. And after I wrote the rap song, I'm like, I'm healed, I'm good. So these things, they do impact in a very positive way. They're very, very, very important tools. So yes, absolutely, super, super important. The artistic tools that if you've got a depressed friend, family member, taking them to a painting class or bringing paints over to their place and just telling them, let's get messy, will be super beneficial, very helpful, very, very helpful.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah,
thank you. It's definitely helped me. And I want to add too that, you don't need to be I want to encourage people, like, you don't need to be an artist, just we are creation. So like you said, bring someone to a class, or yeah.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Just do. I mean, even so, for example, for music, I tell people, you don't need to think about it in an intimidating way. It's think about the expression. You don't work music, you play it. It's play. So just play, right? Just be a kid in that and just play. So thank you for that, Linda. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing.
Thank you. All right. Salim, you're on mute if you're.
I'm talking to my daughter. I'm multitasking.
Right. Sorry, multitasking. All right.
I'm curious about what's happening here, so it was connected. She was asking a question about what's happening here. So.
So time-wise, I don't want to take up too much more of your time. So I wanted to see if we've got any more questions or comments, and if not, we can go straight into the breathing exercise, and everyone can go and have their dinner or lunch or breakfast, depending on where you are.
Yeah, we're in a couple of time zones.
Yeah,
Any more questions?
A lot of gratitude for your presentation. It has been recorded, so that way, we have a little video library and other people can benefit from the guidance that you're providing today. And I'm definitely excited for us to host you in the future. I think we just kind of scratched it a little bit, and we can get a little deeper another time. I think, you have so much to share, and you present it in such a humble, personal way, like from your heart. and you know, having your own experience. So it's so important. The epidemic, like in Peru, we had a couple of friends present, and more than COVID, the challenge was suicide. You know, so I think that everything you're sharing is just so relevant to today, and it's going to give people a lot of wonderful tools. So a lot of gratitude. And any other questions from the group before we go into the breathing? Jack has a little comment. He said he's got a couple of members that have been through a lot of trauma, and your wisdom is very helpful. Thank you.
Yes, just listening for me, I felt is very helpful. So I feel like I spent a lot of my time talking, and it's nice just to listen. So anyway, thank you for all of your wisdom.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jack, for listening. Thank you.
A fantastic yoga teacher who's part of the Synergy community. And I don't think you had a chance to meet Francisco earlier, but he's the founder and co-director. Me and him are co-directors of Synergy. So yeah, so I think, Nyamwathi, again, to honor time, then we can go into the practice. And yeah, if anything comes up for anyone, but I think we should transition into that.
All right. All right, everybody. So before we begin breathing, so we'll just do it for 3 minutes, so not too long. But before we begin, let's just move, because this has been quite a lot of info, and it can be quite draining to process all of that new information together. So I just want you guys to shake your head. Just shake or rotate. Just move the upper body. And then move the shoulders as well. Maybe make some nice circles with the shoulders, make some nice circles with the neck. Just start to feel movement in the upper body here. And then come to stillness. So from here, I want you to bring your shoulders and bring them as high up as you can. Think about touching your ears with your shoulders. So all the way up, and then you're gonna drop your shoulders like hot potatoes, let them go. Very good. Let's do that 2 more times. So bring them up, squeeze, 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 feel the tension, and then release, let it go. Good. And let's do that 1 more time. Squeeze, bring everything up, and then release, let it go. Okay. And now I want you to shake the hands very vigorously, right? So shaking the hands, let's move the energy from the extremities. Excellent. And then release the shaking of the hands. I want you to start to rub your palms together, right? Create heat, create friction. So you can rub as fast as you want or as hard as you want. Just create some heat. Once you feel some heat, I want you to cup your eyes with this, okay? So release and make a little cup to your eyes here. And then as we release, we're gonna press our hands towards our temples, okay? So move your hands apart from each other towards the temples. And then use your hands to massage the side of your jaw. So here, your jawline, use your fingers, maybe your 2 front fingers or the 3 fingers, all the way down the jaw. Bring your fingers back up now to between your eyebrows, 2 fingers between your eyebrows, and separate them a little bit and just massage along your eyebrow and connect that to your temple. Very good. All the way down from the jaw, all the way down to the chin. Very good. Let's do that 1 more time. All the way over the eyebrows to the base of the ear, jawline, all the way down. Let's just do that 1 more time because it feels really yummy. Bring fingers and nice face self-massage. We teach this to corporates, especially working in stressful offices, okay? And then release, okay? Now I want you to open, so we store a lot in our jaw, so I want you guys to open your mouths really wide. Just feel the jaw opening as much as it can. And then close. Very good. And now we're gonna shake the head. So shake the head, shake the head, shake the head. Allow the lips to even shake, so part the lips, and then release. Nice. And now for our last movement, I want you to take your arms, and I want you to give yourself a hug. When was the last time you did this? Probably never. So wrap your arms around yourself like you're a long lost lover, that you found after many years, and just give yourself a squeeze. Very nice. Squeeze yourself really tight, and then release. Okay, so we've helped produce our own oxytocin just by that hug, right? And we've produced other hormones by those movements. Now let's switch into parasympathetic permanently by going into this breath. So sitting in a place nice and quiet and nice and comfortable, I want you to breathe in. So I'm going to count 4, 4, 8, 4. So you inhale for a count of 4, you pause for a count of 4, you exhale for a count of 8, and then you pause for a count of 4. Now, if this feels too intense, that you're running out of breath and you're feeling a little bit freaked out, then you just step it down a notch, but keep the same ratio. So it's 3, 3, 6, 3. I'll be guiding 4, 4, 8, 4, but just do whatever feels good. Even 2, 2, 4, 2. Okay. And let's begin. Inhale now for 4, 3, 2, 1. Now pause for 4, 3, 2, 1. And exhale 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And pause for 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale 4, 3, 2, 1. And pause for 4, 3, 2, 1. And exhale 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And pause for 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale 4, 3, 2, 1. Pause for 4, 3, 2, 1. And exhale 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Pause for 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale 4, 3, 2, 1. Pause for 4, 3, 2, 1. And exhale 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Pause for 4, 3, 2, 1. Last breath. Inhale for 4, 3, 2, 1. Pause for 4, 3, 2, 1. And exhale 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And pause for 4, 3, 2, 1. And just come back to normal breathing. So you can open your eyes here if you need to, or you keep them closed. If you do open them, just soft gaze and then slowly focus on something as you open the eyes. So you will feel an immediate shift that you are super relaxed. And that was only 3 minutes of this breath. So whenever you're in a stressed out state, you can access this breath. You don't need to be seated somewhere quiet. You can be driving. I often access this breath when I'm driving. And so use the breath and feel the shift and help you get into your parasympathetic for as long as you can. Yeah. And with that, I will close the session and I give you the deepest of gratitude. Thank you so much for listening to me, for, being in this space and for allowing me to guide you. And yeah, enjoy yourselves and take care of yourselves. Take care of each other out there, everybody. Sending you guys lots of love.
Thank you so much, Nyamwathi. Fantastic. Shall we share any information in case people want to connect with you?
Absolutely. I will send my website and my social media platforms, especially website and my Instagram is where I put my updates. So even information on the programs, for the psychotherapy and yoga and all of that, everything's on my website. So feel free to sign up. When you log into my website, there'll be a pop-up for a newsletter. Feel free to sign up to that. I don't have a regular active, I'm not going to be spamming people, but whenever I'm launching things, and you want to be notified, do sign up onto my mailing list and I'll keep you guys updated. So I will send, in fact, let me just type in the website here. So it's Yogini.
If you don't mind. So I know yogini.nyamwathi.
Yeah, that's the Instagram. And then I've just typed in here, my website is yogininyamwathi.com.
Beautiful. I think that's helpful because we do have people who work with different populations also on this video chat. So yeah, so please feel free to connect with Nyamwathi family if you'd like to follow up. We'll definitely look for more space for you to, to be a part of other synergy, either workshops or other events. So thank you so much for your time. It's really beautiful work. And yeah, I appreciate you making the time.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're gonna close out the recording.
Thank you, Neil.